When a family cuts you off, they expect you to disappear, not to rise. But what happens when the girl they left on the porch walks into a courtroom years later as the governor? This is not just a story of betrayal, it's about power, redemption, and the moment the silence finally broke. In the heart of suburban Houston, the Westmont neighborhood exuded quiet wealth. Front lawns were trimmed like military haircuts, American flags hung crisply from porches, and neighbors nodded with the kind of politeness that never asked too many questions. Inside the Gonzalez home, the air was thick with tradition. Sunday dinners weren't optional, they were mandated. At the head of the long oak table sat Eduardo Gonzalez, former police chief, the kind of man whose posture never slouched, even off duty. His presence filled the room more than the chandelier overhead. To his right was Lydia Gonzalez, a devout Catholic and equally devout mother of appearances. Her pearls matched her blouse, her smile matched her husband's expectations. To Eduardo's left, glowing under the soft light of the TV behind them, was their pride, Marissa Gonzalez, assistant district attorney and CNN darling. Her name had just been announced as a rising star in the Texas legal system. And at the far end of the table, as far from the praise as possible, sat Elena Gonzalez, 23 years old, fork frozen in midair. She wore a quiet sweater, one sleeve stained with charcoal from the sketches she still dared to create. Her plate was full, her voice absent. No one asked about her recent graduation. No one asked about her degree in comparative literature. No law school plans, no med school aspirations. Just books, art, and a silence so practiced, it became part of the family routine. That night after dinner, while everyone cheered on Marissa's TV appearance, Elena sat alone on the back porch swing with her phone in her lap. A message popped up. "You okay? This video, it's all over." Her fingers trembled. A second message came, then a voicemail. She didn't want to hear it, but she did. The video played. Spring break, her face, her voice, her body, private, intimate, stolen. It had been recorded by her ex-boyfriend. She never gave him permission. And now, it was on 3 different websites. Being shared in anonymous forums. Elena couldn't breathe. She didn't sleep that night, just sat curled on her mattress, the walls pressing in. Eduardo burst into her room the next morning without knocking. His eyes were flames under cold glass. "You think this family name is yours to disgrace?" he spat, waving a printed screenshot. "I didn't post it," Elena whispered. "I didn't know. You gave him the ammunition," he snarled. "Now you face the shot." He threw her college diploma at her feet. "Go, be trash if that's what you want, but not under this roof, not under my name." Lydia stood behind him, clutching her rosary like a lifeline. Her lips never moved. Her eyes never rose. Elena turned to Marissa. Her sister folded her arms. Nothing. Just silence. Elena packed slowly. Her sketchbooks, a notebook filled with poems, her red JanSport backpack from freshman year. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. No one offered her a ride. Eduardo placed her debit card on the kitchen counter like it was evidence. "Don't call. Don't come back." She stepped into the humid Texas night, her mother watching from the curtains. No hug, no wave, just a quiet burn in her chest. She walked 3 blocks before hailing a cab. No destination, just away. By the time she arrived in Denver, Colorado 5 days later, she had dyed her hair, shortened her name to LR, and secured a room in a shared house full of strangers. She found work at a call center, night shifts, quiet hours, no questions. She wrote in a private code she'd invented as a kid, one only she could understand. Each entry in her journal began with a single phrase. "They called it a fall. I call it a fire." One night, while on a break outside her second job at a clinic, she heard raised voices. A woman, nervous, undocumented, stood with a sick child in her arms, facing an officer demanding she sign papers she didn't understand. Elena stepped forward without thinking. She translated, de-escalated. The man who ran the clinic, Rafael Cortez, later pulled her aside. "You stood up when no one else did," he said. "I had nothing left to lose," Elena answered. Rafael smiled. "Then maybe it's time you start building something new." He offered her a job, not as janitorial staff, but in advocacy. She began by filing paperwork, then coordinating services, then helping write grants. She watched, she learned. She rose, quietly, steadily, without permission. And every night, she whispered into her pillow, "I will not be remembered for what they said. I will be remembered for what I build." In Denver's South Capitol Hill district, Elle now lived in a one-bedroom walk-up. It was nothing grand: peeling paint, loud neighbors, a window that refused to shut, but it was hers. It was the first place she paid for, without family money, without any last name to leverage. By day, she worked at Libertas Network, a small but growing nonprofit that advocated for immigrant rights. By night, she wrote memos, proposals, grant applications, and sometimes just poetry in the margins of manila folders. She still hadn't told anyone her full story. She wasn't ready. Her boss, Rafael Cortez, saw potential in her, not just as a caseworker, but as someone who could rewrite systems. Over time, she stopped fetching coffee and started briefing attorneys. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but she was the clearest. At a community council meeting one chilly Tuesday, she stood up during the Q&A. "If the law refuses to grow with justice," she said calmly. Within a year, Elle was being asked to consult on city funding proposals. She ran outreach campaigns, trained new staff, and published op-eds that caught the attention of local news outlets. Her writing didn't beg for sympathy, it demanded clarity. One article was titled, "Invisible but Not Powerless." Another, "We don't all survive, but some of us rebuild." She received emails, letters, even late-night phone calls from young women saying, "You helped me speak when I thought I was alone." One afternoon, after testifying before the Denver City Council about discriminatory housing practices, a reporter from the Rocky Mountain Chronicle approached her in the hallway. "You're LR?" he asked, almost disbelieving. She nodded. "We'd like to do a story on you. You're becoming the face of change." She hesitated. "Faces fade," she said. "But maybe if we focus on the work." The headline that followed ran anyway. "From Shadows to City Hall, the mysterious woman fighting for Colorado's forgotten." Despite her growing reputation, Elle still avoided the internet. She didn't search for her family, didn't check her old social media accounts, but sometimes in dreams, she still heard the click of a lock, the echo of, "You're a disgrace," the cold eyes of her sister. She channeled that ache into fire, and that fire burned with direction. 3 years after she'd vanished from Houston, Elle stood in a modest community park at a podium borrowed from a school board. She wore a navy coat and no jewelry. The crowd was small, maybe 60 people, but every head turned when she said the words, "I'm running as an independent for the Colorado State House." Not Republican, not Democrat, not endorsed. Unapologetic, unowned. People whispered, "She has no political machine. She doesn't even come from here. She's just her." And that was enough. 2 weeks into her campaign, the local papers started connecting dots. LR once worked under a false name. Is she hiding something? Who is LR, and why won't she tell us her family background? She didn't flinch. She released a statement. "I wasn't hiding, I was surviving. Now I'm here to serve." That line went viral. A new hashtag emerged, "Surviving to Serve." College students printed it on t-shirts. Activists made posters. The whisper was now a ripple. Late one Friday, Elle's campaign manager knocked on her door. "You need to see this." It was a headline from Houston. "Texas ADA Marissa Gonzalez under investigation for evidence tampering." Elle froze. She hadn't said that name aloud in years. She had avoided saying it even in her mind. The article was short, but damning. Whistleblowers, missing evidence, mishandled cases, her sister, and like a signal from the past, it reached her all the way from a place she thought she'd left behind. "Don't get involved," her staff urged. "Let it play out." But Elle couldn't. Not because she wanted to defend her sister, God no, but because of what it represented. Justice was now knocking on her past, and this time she wasn't going to run. She booked a flight to Houston under her real name, Elena Reyes Gonzalez. She didn't bring security, no press, no entourage, just a coat, a purpose, and a silence that had finally ended. It had been nearly 7 years since Elena had last stepped foot in Texas. The humid air wrapped around her like memory, thick with ghosts. The city hadn't changed, but she had. Now Governor Elena Reyes Gonzalez, known to Colorado as LR, known to herself as someone entirely different, returned without fanfare. No aides, no reporters, just purpose. She wore a plain gray coat, her hair tied back in a no-nonsense knot. Her boots clicked softly down the hallway of Bexar County Courthouse as she entered through a side door. She found a seat in the last row. She didn't want to be seen, but she knew she would be. The trial of Marissa Gonzalez, once the ADA with a flawless record, was the talk of Texas. Charges, evidence tampering, obstruction, potential abuse of power. Judge Lorraine Maddox, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with eyes like searchlights, entered the courtroom and glanced across the gallery as she took her seat. Then she paused. A double take. She leaned forward. "Is that Elena Reyes Gonzalez?" she asked, not to the court but aloud, surprised. Heads turned like dominoes. Marissa's eyes snapped up. Gasps, clicks, whispers. "That's the governor. Is that her sister?" Oh my God. Elena didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't blink. Marissa's face drained of color. The prosecutor who once wielded a courtroom like a sword now sat frozen under the weight of her sister's return. Judge Maddox cleared her throat, composed herself, and resumed. But the courtroom never settled. Every few minutes, someone looked back, and there she was, silent, unshaken, present. No, not for revenge, not for reunion, just for truth. When the gavel finally struck, Elena stood quietly and left the same way she entered. The media frenzy began before she even reached the airport. Governor seen at sister's trial. Estranged family reunited in courtroom bombshell. From disgrace to power. The Elena Gonzalez saga. She ignored the headlines. When her press secretary asked if they should issue a statement, Elena simply said, "Let them look. I've survived being seen before." That night, her phone rang. It was her father. She hadn't heard Eduardo Gonzalez's voice in over a decade. "You're using our name," he said, as if it were property. "No," Elena replied. "I made it mine." Silence. Then, "You need to come home." The old command, laced with guilt. But this time she didn't tremble. The Gonzalez house hadn't changed. Same lemon oil furniture, same neatly arranged silverware. Teresa opened the door with a trembling smile. Eduardo stood stiff behind her. Marissa was already seated, eyes lowered, folding a napkin into anxious shapes. Elena sat opposite her. No greetings, no smiles, just presence. Eventually, Marissa broke the silence. "I know I messed up," she said, voice brittle. "I didn't think it would go this far." Teresa reached for Elena's hand, but stopped just short. "We were thinking," she whispered. "Maybe you could say something, a recommendation, just help." Elena looked at each of them. Her mother's eyes begged, her father's posture dared, her sister's shoulders sagged. And then she said, calm and final, "I rebuilt my life without you. I rewrote my name without your help. This house used to suffocate me. Now I don't fit inside it. You want me to protect the family? You never considered me part of it." She stood and walked out, again. But this time, she wasn't the one left behind. At 3:12 a.m., her phone buzzed again. Screenshots, emails, fragments of that old spring break video resurfaced. Anonymous accounts, whispered threats, a call from a contact at the Department of Justice. "You didn't hear it from me, but your father's asking questions. Background digging. He's fishing for leverage." So this was their play, to scare her silent again. Only this time, she had a voice. Elena didn't wait for it to come. She drafted a bill, the Justice Witness Protection Act, a proposal to criminalize attempts to manipulate public officials or whistleblowers through family shame, private threats, or reputation blackmail. She never named names, but everyone knew. Every news outlet ran the story. The governor who turned her scars into law, 6 months after her courtroom appearance. Elena's days had returned to a rhythm. The legislation had passed through Colorado's lower chamber. Advocacy groups nationwide had picked it up. Whistleblowers now quoted her bill as protection. She was no longer the scandal's sister. She was something else entirely. Then, one rainy afternoon, her assistant tapped gently on the office door. "Governor, Marissa Gonzalez is in the lobby." Elena didn't speak at first. Then calmly, "Did she make an appointment?" "No, she just showed up." Marissa entered quietly. No suit, no makeup, no confidence, just a woman stripped bare by consequence. "I didn't know how to start," she began, eyes cast downward. "But I know I ruined what we could have had as sisters before I ever realized I was jealous of you." Elena sat silently, watchful. Marissa continued, "I don't want to go to prison, but I'm not here to ask you to fix it. I just needed to tell you the truth." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. "I stepped on you to climb higher, and now I look up, and you're somewhere I can't even see the ceiling of." Elena stood slowly and walked to her cabinet. From a drawer, she pulled a folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter of clemency, never signed, never sent. She handed it to Marissa. "I wrote this months ago," Elena said, "then burned it in my head a dozen times. I thought you didn't deserve it. But now I realize, whether or not you do, I don't owe it." Marissa reached for the letter, but Elena pulled it back. She slid it under the folder, untouched. No forgiveness, no rage, just clarity. Meanwhile, the news had shifted its tone. Marissa Gonzalez, once the golden legal mind of Texas, now faced criminal charges. Colleagues who once praised her backed away with PR-crafted statements. "The allegations are concerning. We believe in due process." The name Gonzalez, once an advantage, now felt like a stain. Except for Elena. She stood still, unbothered, unshaken. She never gave an interview, never defended, never attacked. She simply worked. Elena's and let her past speak for itself. At a national justice conference, Elena took the stage. Behind her, a video montage of anonymous voices, survivors of family betrayal, manipulation, and systemic silence. Faces blurred, voices disguised. Then her introduction. Governor Elena Reyes Gonzalez, advocate, reformer, daughter. She stepped into the light, no script, just truth. "We don't always survive where we were planted, but that doesn't mean we can't grow elsewhere." She paused, scanning the crowd. "This bill, this movement, it's not just about politics. It's about healing, because sometimes the deepest wounds aren't caused by strangers, but by people who once tucked us in at night." In the last row, barely visible behind the curtain, sat Eduardo Gonzalez. No badge, no authority, just a man in a cheap windbreaker, arms crossed, not in power, but protection. He didn't speak, he didn't approach, but he stayed. Elena's, and for the first time, he listened. When the applause faded, Elena stepped backstage. A staffer approached with a phone. "There's someone on line 2 asking for a private meeting." She looked at the name. Teresa Gonzalez. She didn't answer. Instead, she took her coat, walked to the street, and let the cold wind kiss her face. She didn't need closure. She needed space. And finally, she had it. The following week, she made one final stop, a hospital in Houston. Her mother had admitted complications from hypertension. She walked in unannounced, no press. Teresa looked smaller now, fragile. Their eyes met. "If what they say is true," Teresa whispered, "then I've spent years not seeing you." On the bedside table sat a painting Elena had made years earlier, one she never remembered giving away. A woman standing in a desert. The title written in small black ink, Witness. Elena left without saying goodbye. Back in Colorado, no cameras waited, no press trucks lined the street, just her office, her team, and her mission. Her assistant asked again, "Should we issue a final statement on your sister's trial?" Elena shook her head. "No. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is say nothing at all." 6 months passed. The Colorado Capitol buzzed with routine. No scandals, no investigations, no whispers about the sister. Just Elena Reyes Gonzalez, governor, advocate, and force of reform. She walked to work one morning with a coffee in hand, no escort, no spotlight. She crossed 14th and Bannock Street beneath soft golden light, unrecognized by most. And she liked it that way. I don't need to be remembered, she thought, to keep doing what no one else dares to. Just before noon, her assistant stepped in. Governor, there's someone here to see you. Elena glanced up. Did they schedule? No, but it's Marissa again. A pause. She brought no lawyers, no entourage. Elena stood, motioned her in. Marissa entered quietly. She looked different, less wounded, more aware. Not confident, just real. I don't expect you to help me, she said softly. I'm not asking you to clear my name. Elena said nothing. But I realized I never knew you. And maybe if I had, I wouldn't have feared you so much. I thought you were weak, but you just weren't what they expected. And that scared them. It scared me. Her voice broke, but still she stayed standing. Elena gestured to the chair. They sat. No hostility, just history between them, raw and real. You didn't destroy me, Elena said finally. You taught me that I could live without needing anyone to see me, because I learned how to see myself. I didn't come for forgiveness, Marissa replied. I came for truth. They sat in silence, eyes level. Not sisters again, but not enemies anymore. Something else. When Marissa left, Elena stayed seated for a long time. She thought about that unsigned clemency letter, about her mother in that hospital bed, about her father in the shadows of the auditorium. And she realized something. She wasn't running anymore, not from them, not from her story, not from her name. She had outgrown it. Later that month, Elena stood before Congress. The room was packed, cameras broadcasted live. Today, I'm proud to announce a new proposal, the Public Kinship Act, a policy to prevent political weaponization through private family manipulation. Some called it too personal, too bold, but survivors called it what it was: hope. The bill passed the first reading with bipartisan support. At a university Q&A, a journalism student asked, "Governor, how did you make it without your family's support?" Elena smiled, honest and unguarded. I didn't make it. I just stopped waiting for them and started moving forward anyway. Laughter rose, soft but real. We don't choose our blood, she continued, but we do choose which legacies we carry and, more importantly, which ones we lay down. Months later, Elena gave a speech at a national civic forum. No title flashed on screen, no introduction fanfare, just 3 words scrawled in chalk behind her. Ruthless, gentle, leader. She began. People ask me all the time, how did you do it? Truth is, I didn't do it alone, but not in the way you'd think. I had no cheerleaders, no family inheritance. What I had was pain, and I turned it into momentum. From the crowd, someone clapped, then another. She caught eyes with someone in the back, her father. He didn't look proud. He didn't look angry, just old, still, quiet. When the crowd dispersed, he approached the mic. Everyone turned. He said, I never understood my daughter. I still don't, but maybe that's my fault. Then he left. No handshake, no hug, just acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all that's left. Elena walked alone down the Capitol steps, wind tugging at her coat. She didn't carry the weight of shame or the burden of approval. She carried only one thing, her legacy, and it was hers alone. If you've ever been dismissed, if you've ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to protect you, then know this: you don't need their permission to rise. You don't need their validation to heal. You don't even need them to believe in you, as long as you believe in who you are becoming. If this story resonated with you, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and leave a comment sharing where you're watching from, because someone out there needs to hear your voice too.